Welcome to Vistas by WebCheck Security. News, views, and insights into the cybersecurity realm, leadership, and entrepreneurship. Produced by WebCheck Security, a world-class cyber penetration testing and risk mitigation company. My name is Greg Johnson, and I'm your host. Today's podcast features our inaugural guest and anchor sponsor organization, Earl Foote, the CEO of Nexus IT Consultants. In the next hour, we'll learn about critical trends in managed services and, more importantly, cybersecurity. Vistas is sponsored by Vivint Smart Home. Look, have you ever wondered what would happen if I were robbed? What would they get? Who do I call to protect me? Well, look no further than Vivint Smart Home. They have the best technology for cameras, doorbells, garage sensors, window sensors, thermostats, everything you'll need all in one app. For world-class security and home automation, call Vivint today at 1-800-570-1313. That's right, 1-800-570-1313. Now, anchoring Vista sponsorship is Nexus IT, a worry-free, hyper-responsive, and white-glove organization and approach to providing world-class IT support and solutions so leaders can focus on their business. Earl's crew is awesome, and he plays a mean bass in a band called 90 Proof. So for your IT security needs, get this phone number, 435-659-2533. That's 435-659-2533. Or reach out to www.nexusitc.net. I might add that Earl's team is growing and has made half a dozen critical and technical management hires this year, taking the region by storm. And so it is with great pleasure that I introduce to you Earl Foote. He is the CEO and founder at Nexus IT Consultants. He's also on the Salt Lake Chamber Board of Governors and also the Five School Advisory Board, or V-School Advisory Board. Earl was with us on our inaugural podcast a little over a year ago. And that was a good time, but a lot has changed, and I'm really excited to talk to him today in this session. Now, Earl is a serial entrepreneur with a massive itch to see and experience the world, its cultures, people, and food. I like that, Earl. In 2019 alone, Earl did 14 business and personal trips around the world, from Vancouver, BC to Costa Rica to Spain to Iceland and Dubai. You got to get back there, buddy, with COVID and everything being almost over here, right? As a co-founder of Elevate International, a project that's passionate about offering adventures, retreats, and humanitarian service opportunities to leaders, he shares his wanderlust for seeing the world to bless the lives of at-risk children. Earl brings an open and abundance-minded, fun-loving nature to those around him. His life's passions and pastimes include skiing, biking, camping, backpacking, and music. Although he spends much of his time in the great outdoors, he draws his greatest joy in life, spending quality time with family, friends, and loved ones, and playing and performing with his band, 90 Proof. Did I get that right, Earl? 90 Proof?
That's right. Okay. Absolutely right.
More than anything, Earl strives to make a positive impact in the world and the lives of those that surround him, including his team and his primary venture, Nexus IT. Well, Earl, welcome.
Craig, that was quite the intro. Certainly a lot of very inflated information there. This is not accurate. No, but I'm totally messing around. But thank you so much for the invitation, to be on here on Vistas with you again, my friend. It's such a pleasure.
Well, we've experienced a lot together in the past year, and for our listeners, Nexus IT. We'll get into this, but they're as much about cybersecurity as they are about managed operational IT services, and they are one of WebCheck Security's best partners. Earl is, maybe I shouldn't say this, but he's one of the few MSPs that actually gets it. He gets cybersecurity. He understands what's required, and it's been a blessing to work, Earl, with your organization. Now, one of the things that's happened recently is you were acknowledged as one of the nation's top MSPs. So tell our listeners about that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Greg. So we were recognized in the CRN MSP 500, specifically in the Pioneer 250 category of that award group, and essentially that award is reserved for the top 250 MSP MSSPs in the nation that are consistently innovating, disrupting, pushing the industry forward, and raising the bar across the industry on operational excellence and practice, and definitely on that cybersecurity and compliance front. And so, we're very honored to have been recognized in that group of elite MSP, MSSP, IT service providers across the country. And you're right, really, Greg, we've over the past, of course, we've been around now for almost 24 years, 23 and a half years.
Oh, wow.
Really over the past 12 to 15 years, we've carved out quite a niche as an MSSP, really a full end-to-end MSP, MSSP with a very tight focus on cybersecurity and compliance. And so most of our solutions and offerings and our products and services revolve around very robust cybersecurity and compliance practices. Therefore, the majority of the companies we do business with are either in highly regulated industries where cybersecurity and compliance are not a luxury, they are mandatory, or,
right.
A lot of our clients are progressive companies that lie outside of that realm, but companies that understand and know the value and the opportunity in being, cyber responsible businesses. And so, that's kind of where we've found our spot in the market. And honestly, it's a place we really enjoy being. It is one of the more challenging places to be, because obviously you are taking on the liability and the legalities involved in cybersecurity and compliance off of the plate of our partners, and putting that square on our own shoulders and our team, and it is a I'd call it risky. It's definitely a more challenging space to be in, but it's what we like to do, and it's really where we like to, where we enjoy being, and it's where we can add significant value into the ecosystem and our partner relationships. Which is, in my bio, you had said that, I strive to make a positive impact, and that's not just in people's lives, but everything we do as an organization revolves around making a positive impact in the businesses that we partner with, the businesses and organizations that we partner with, I should say. Our entire model and our offerings have all been built with that in mind. How do we add significant value into these relationships? How do we help these companies, obviously, be secure, be compliant, have robust technology, but also technology that aligns with their business their business plan, technology that, as we look at their 3 and their 5 year goals and roadmaps, how do we help propel that and enable that through properly leveraging technology and their technology stack? And then how do we harden that whole stack and make sure that they're compliant in the process, right? That's kind of the niche we play in there.
Well, Earl, it's been really exciting to see you achieve those goals, and to our listeners, interacting with you as a partner. Everything Earl says is true. He does strive to add value. There's no airs about Earl, trying to be cool and being successful. He's not letting it go to his head. In fact, Earl, I was surprised you said you've been in business for 23 years, but shaved the beard and you don't look a day over 25, my friend.
That is part of the reason why I wear the beard, and it is my wife's. It was her idea to have the longer beard. It is her blessing that I wear it, because I look like a 12-year-old when I shave it off.
Well, as you get older, you'll appreciate the baby face type thing. But seeing you achieve your goals in the past year has been neat. I remember when WebCheck Security, a little over 4 years ago, was starting to go mainstream and full time, if you were, and sitting down with you with lunch and you talking about moving upstream. Well, you've certainly moved far beyond just a moving upstream, and you've just explained how some of that has worked. Talk a little bit specifically about how your strategy has matured. You've talked about future expansion and possible even acquisitions, and how your cyber offerings have matured as well. Let's just spend a moment on strategy.
Yeah, most definitely. In our in our vision and the way that we see the landscape evolving in front of us and the market evolving in front of us is that cybersecurity and compliance obviously have been significantly important things over the past, 10 to 15 years, but that is evolving at a really, really rapid pace. And frankly, we feel like, that is where our industry is going to continue to evolve. And those that aren't really part of that program are going to find themselves in difficult conversations where they're unable to fulfill, service needs for their clientele. And obviously that puts the client in a difficult situation where they oftentimes have to make a decision about how they move forward. And sometimes that's without you, right? And so we have definitely seen that wave coming for, more than a decade. And we've, worked really hard strategically to position ourselves to ride that wave forward. Now, I won't pretend that that's always going to be the wave, but we know it's going to be a big piece of, history and business, even for, decades to come at this point. And so, we've worked hard to focus in those realms and make sure, again, as a managed service provider, that all of our programs and packages and offerings and services, revolve around robust cybersecurity and compliance practices. Beyond that, as you mentioned, we are an organization who is growing at significant pace. We've brought in a lot of new, key hires and a lot of new technical hires. We are actively hiring for 8 or 10 positions right now. We've doubled our team size in the last year. We've doubled our revenue in the last year, which we've done, 5 years within the last decade.
Congratulations, by the way. That is not easy to do.
It's it takes a really committed team that sees the vision and wants to build something really meaningful, together. Otherwise, there's just no way to do it, to sustain that type of growth. And to this point, as a bootstrapped organization, not digging into anybody else's pockets, but using our own pockets to do that, right? We have executed, last year an acquisition and, a few other smaller acquisitions many years prior to that. But as we continue to work on our regional and national expansion efforts, we know M&A is going to play a big part, and that's a big part of our current strategy. In fact, we just made a key hire to help with that strategy. We brought on Brianne Rochelle, who
yes,
as our Director of Strategic Growth, is going to help with market expansion in other major U.S. and emerging markets. We are actively vetting multiple different candidates right now in multiple different markets, including the local market, for potential mergers and figuring out how we can strategically align to build an organization that can answer more questions for the market and the evolving needs, that can address those and continue to have this holistic end-to-end type of offering that that really makes it an easy choice for business leadership units to decide that you are the firm that they need to align with in order to cover their backs and help them leverage the opportunity that lies ahead.
Fantastic. Now talk a little bit about specifically about in all of that, which great strategy, Earl. I'm loving it. I'm loving the growth we're seeing. What's so unique about it is that you've sustained the customer success factor. In other words, you haven't diluted the customer experience. You don't have clients that are saying, oh yeah, we did business with Nexus and yeah, they were okay. We hear that about other partners, but not Nexus IT in all honesty. But But talk about in all of that how your cyber offerings have matured. What are you doing today that's different than what you did, say, a year ago or even 5 years ago?
Yeah, maybe two parts to that question, or comment and question. And just to reiterate, that one piece, the customer experience, has been, our massive focus. Really, we focus on two things as leaders, and as operators of this business, and that is the employee experience and our customer experience. And usually we find that as leaders, if we make sure that our employees have the right experience, then our customers have the right experience. When the culture is built around, enabling and empowering our people, and making them, feel rewarded and fulfilled and enjoying what they're doing, then, they make sure that our customer experience lines up where it needs to be. And that I can be, straightforward, Greg, that's not always easy, particularly as you're scaling quick as a company. Right. There's lots of little tweaks and, fine tuning that you have to do, when you grow beyond one level, of volume and quantity of clients, or, volume of revenue. You have to make tweaks along the way. You end up breaking some processes and procedures and systems. And, here and there, a customer might have an experience that they go, hey, this doesn't really meet the standard that we're used to, right? And you go, we're sorry, help us understand what went wrong. Let's operationalize a fix together for this so that you never have to experience it again, and no other client ever has to experience it again. So that's been, a very important part of our journey, and something we never been willing to sacrifice on. And honestly, it's a big part of our secret sauce. It's part of our recipe of, what sets us apart in the market. Because, I would say if you went to, all of our clients, 98% of them would say they're having a fantastic experience right now, right? Yeah. Maybe there's a few where, we've fallen short here or there, but we're working on those things, and we work with our clients to help them understand that we want that feedback. In fact, we tell them all feedback's positive, no matter how you view it. It's an opportunity for us to assess gaps and blind spots and to operationalize fixes for those. So please share your feedback. You asked about, how our offerings have evolved. And it's interesting, I would say that today, we are a very different company, and our offerings are very different than they were pre-COVID. COVID has propelled a shift in our market and in how IT departments and cybersecurity departments work, day in and day out, and address these distributed workforce situations. Mm-hmm. Pre-COVID, for the most part, we had fairly good control over environments by making sure they were contained within corporate offices, in a cloud, in, a few branch offices. So a lot of organizations that we deal with, maybe had 5 offices total, or 5, locations where they had infrastructure prior to COVID. And then suddenly, March of 2020 comes along, and they send hundreds and sometimes thousands of people home to work from home. And some of those people are no longer working on corporate issued devices, but they're working on, what we refer to as BYOD, or bring your own device. They're working on their own laptops, or, family tablets, or their smartphones. And so all of a sudden you take 5 offices and you make it 1,000 offices, right? And right. And you also have a lot of these variables of devices and controls and connections that are completely out of your control and your administration. And so your attack vectors, have increased by often cases tens or hundreds of times in recent years. And now we have to account for those equations in a different manner, which means, you have to really double down on things like, multi-factor authentication, or referred to as, 2FA oftentimes, things like zero trust and privileged access and single sign-on and VPNs and, cloud VDIs, or virtual desktops. We do a lot of that, because when users are connecting from a myriad of distinct, devices that don't belong to the corporation, if they connect to a virtual desktop in the cloud, of course, we have administrative control over that and how permissions all work, and we can keep it locked down adequately to make sure that user has the right experience. Because if the user can't get work done, they'll find workarounds, right? They'll find ways to get around the security measures you put in place. But in an environment where we can control the security and we can have measures, but we can make sure the users, have the right experience, while still making sure that it's adequately locked down, is very important. So, I would say that's some of the evolution. Of course, cyber and compliance regulations and frameworks are pushing forward the need for 24/7 security operations centers, right? And so what you and I refer to as SOC. That's a consistent. A consistent part of our strategy is building out more and more robust, around the clock security operations center, people and AI, keeping watch on environments and making sure that there's no malicious behavior or traffic, and shutting that stuff down and remediating when something is going wrong. And that's just part of it, Greg. I think, this is 15 years ago, robust cybersecurity was having Norton antivirus, right?
Right.
And now it's this massive multi-layered approach of, oftentimes when you do an in-depth assessment of a company's needs and their objectives and where they're going in the next several years, you build this multi-layered approach that might include a dozen to 20 or 25 different, measures and solutions. And of course, that also, the other thing that we're seeing, evolve at a really rapid pace is the need for policy, practice, procedure, for training your people. Of course, you and I know that 90 to 95% of all breaches happen because of human error, whether it's intentful or not, or malicious or not. That is the reality. And so the more that you can make sure that your users understand the threats and how to avoid them. And that's certainly something we've seen, that's evolved and has become a massive necessity over even the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah. And if I may add an insight too, Earl, a little over a year ago, it may be going on 2 now, you and your team started offering such assessments in depth of policy, practice, and procedure. It is possible to do a great assessment on a distributed work environment where we look at things like Jamf for the Mac, or we look at whether or not they're using tools that Nexus could provide to lock down the desktop, or VDI, virtual desktops, and other technologies, and BYOD practices and controls, if you will. And you've also started offering expert penetration testing as well. There are some great guys that do that, I understand.
Who could that be? No, definitely. As we've seen the need in the marketplace, obviously we align with strategic partners that can help us fill gaps. And that's something that you and your team, WebCheck, the compliance and cyber needs are becoming so prevalent for businesses, and they need highly trained professionals that have, really specialized certifications like CISM and CISSP and Certified Ethical Hacker and more, right? And so you create this pool of, what I know you refer to as fractional information security officers, or FISOs. In the wild, they're referred to as chief information security officers, or CISOs. These types of individuals are in high demand. They are highly trained. They're really, specialized, and they're not easy to come by. And so, a partner like you, who's built a nationwide network of very talented, CISOs and FISOs that MSSPs and MSPs like us can leverage, just helps enhance what we're able to do for our clientele in this deep work of really evaluating people, practice, process, procedure, and then helping those companies fine tune all of those and get to a point where it all makes sense, and it's also working in their favor from a security and compliance perspective. Of course, part of that is the penetration testing or vulnerability and risk assessments that your organization does. And a lot of these compliance regulations that we're talking about require at minimum annual independent, security assessments and or audits, sometimes by accredited bodies, right? So that's been a significant evolution as well in our journey here and the offerings, and we see that being continue to be a massive opportunity in space where there's going to be a lot of movement in this market moving forward.
And that's what I mean, Earl, by part of the evolution I've seen at Nexus IT is when I say that Earl Foote gets it and his team, you are not just an MSP. You've graduated, I believe, to the ranks of an MSSP, a managed security service provider as well. Not just looking at the operational du jour part of IT, keeping databases, Windows servers, and Active Directory or remote desktops properly secured with MFA. You're looking at as you mentioned, the policies, the practices, the procedures. Where are the holes? Where are the gaps? Where's the change control? Where's the HR offboarding? Is it written? Is it in policy? Are there metrics to check these kinds of things? Do they do annual penetration testing? Nexus IT gets that there are these frameworks called NIST, CIS, and then other regulatory frameworks like HIPAA, PCI, HITRUST, and on and on and on. There's SEC regulations. There's a Federal Trade Commission can get involved, and you get that. It's been so exciting to watch how you and your sales reps go in and provide solutions, not just, hey, let's install antivirus. We certainly have graduated beyond that. Well, Earl, what do you see right now as some of the critical threats in the cybersecurity landscape? You've alluded to phishing and social engineering, but what's going on out there, and what are some of the key things that Nexus is offering to counteract those trends and strengthen organizational cyber hygiene?
Yeah. This is a topic that, I want to tread lightly around just because, there's geopolitical, situations happening, in our world that have actually, caused this whole landscape to really morph over the last couple of months.
Right.
And, COVID in and of itself, caused a massive evolution in the cybersecurity landscape and in the attack vectors and the quantity of attack attempts, right? We saw those, nearly overnight, increase tenfold, right? And now with this Russian-Ukrainian conflict, they are literally at cyber war every day, which it's kind of an interesting thing to follow and see what's happening. But they both have cyber warfare forces that are, and you and I have partners right here in Utah who have teammates who have left employment to go to work for the Ukrainian government as cyber soldiers, and literally they are fighting on a different battlefield. Of course, they're fighting on physical battlefields at the moment, but they're also fighting in cyberspace. And not only that, then you get hacktivist groups like Anonymous who decide they're going to pick a side and they're going to go after Russia. The thing that that's happened in recent months is, of course, Russian forces, unfortunately, are also targeting businesses and or governments that oppose what they are doing. And so at the moment, U.S. businesses are very much in the crosshairs of this war, of this conflict in cyberspace. Right. And I can tell you unequivocally, over the last couple of months, our team has seen the amount of hacking attempts and the amount of hacks, the amount of breaches or cyber incidents right here in Utah or in our Intermountain West region. We've right. seen the quantity increase at staggering sort of pace. And so, we are consistently, working on being more and more hypervigilant all the time. We're seeing our client environments become, or be under attack a lot more than they were previously. And we are seeing a lot of, companies come to us that are not current clients, that are in situations where they've been they've been breached, they've had an incident. And oftentimes, of course, hackers cover their tracks really well, but sometimes you can follow the trail of breadcrumbs. And some of this, honestly, it leads back to Russian IP addresses. Whether or not it leads further than that, sometimes, it is undetermined. But yes, this is very much a real thing that's happening right here and now, and it is affecting us on a global scale. It's not just here in Utah or in the U.S., it's globally. Even Anonymous, for example, has in the last few days basically said, if you are a global corporation operating in Russia and you are not pulling your operations out of Russia, you are a target and we're coming after you, right? Wow. And this is a hacktivist group, right? That they tout themselves as the Robin Hood of the cyber warfare space, right? They are by governments, they are
they're ideological hackers, is what they are.
Ideological hackers. Yeah. They are declared to be terrorists, cyber terrorists, right? So while there might be some benevolent mentalities, and ideology behind what they're trying to do, right, they are destructive. But that's something that also, U.S. businesses have to be thinking about, or global businesses have to be thinking about. If I'm going to stay, keep my operations in Russia at the moment, I probably open myself up to, multiple different hacking groups and or nation state, hacking groups that are going to be interested in making a point out of me, right?
Right. And the reality is that, you touch on something interesting. The Russian GRU, through Sandworm, Revil, DarkSide, and other hacktivist or hacking groups, have been hacking us for a long time. Back in 2015, I believe it was, the Ukrainian power grid, this was a precursor, was hacked, and they were taken down by Sandworm. And there's a whole book about that, but yep, they've been preparing for this for a long time. And, the Biden administration has acknowledged and also signed executive orders stating that we need to tighten our cybersecurity critical infrastructure and that all businesses need to be concerned. As you've seen, Earl, it wasn't just the defense supply chain client of yours that has had Russian IP addresses running scans, right? These are mainstream businesses. Everybody is at risk. So what are some of the things that you're doing to strengthen organizational cyber hygiene? I know we've talked about some of them, but re-articulate those a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we definitely talked about a lot of those more modern, measures for distributed workforces right now. I think that a big part of the current equation is that for most organizations, security operations center or SOC services, and what we refer to as SIEM services as well in our industry, are no longer really a luxury. They're becoming mandatory to have 24/7, 365 insight into what's happening in your network, what's happening on the edge of your network, and to be actively, combating these attempts to infiltrate your infrastructure. Not only that, but certainly the solutions, the software and the hardware that we roll out is also evolving, with the landscape to detect malicious behavior, to shut that down, to, what we refer to now no longer as antivirus, but now next-gen endpoint security, right? And most next-gen endpoint security now has anti-ransomware built into it, which means it will detect malicious behavior of encryption of files or alteration of files. It will not only stop that, but it will roll back the changes that makes, right? So we're seeing evolution in the software and hardware solutions that we use, that businesses use, throughout their IT infrastructure, and lots of new startups and solutions that are coming out, that are trying to address these threats and this new variable of a massively distributed workforce, and figure out how we get back to a point where we can be more secure in these new environments and new conditions. Things like, again, single sign-on, zero trust, privilege access, These are all, newer emerging sort of technologies that are helping to address these types of scenarios. And then, of course, because we've talked about phishing and social engineering, being really the biggest attack vector and the most common point of entry for a cyber incident, cyber education and the maturity of cyber education, we're seeing evolve very quickly as well. A lot of, new offerings and new product enhancements and that kind of stuff that's happening in the industry. And those all kind of have to be, I think, on, part of the radar and part of a program for modern businesses in this world today.
Yes. And Earl, the neat thing is that Nexus has access to so many different technologies and vendors, and your smart guys like Lou, Casey, some of your engineers, Steve, as they're consulting with customers, they can go in and say, well, this particular technology is probably better than technology B, whether it's a SOC or a SIM, a 24/7 solution, whether it's endpoint, and that's kind of the neat thing about working with Nexus is you guys are in there not to push product, but to provide real solutions for your clients. And I think you hit the nail on the head, Earl. SSO, MFA, and all these different types of technologies, pushing the edge to home and what protections can be put on other devices. This has become critical. I noticed the PCI SSC, the Security Council that manages the PCI DSS, which is the data security standard for all credit card processing, for example. We all take credit cards in our businesses, and so we're beholden to a certain level of merchant compliance. They recently came out with the PCI DSS 4.0, which shows a maturity versus what it was in 2006 when they first started. And one of those is that it's no longer administrative non-console access into the cardholder environment that now requires MFA. It's everybody who has access to the cardholder data environment. That means call center agents that are taking calls and traversing credit card data because they're taking it on a phone call now have to log in with their machines when they go into work, whether that's at home or whatever, with multi-factor authentication. And so there's going to be a lot of neat changes coming forward in the industry. Well, folks, we're going to take a quick break here. It used to be notebooks, posters, banners, proofreading, ads, physical invites. Now it's virtual servers, as you've been hearing in this podcast, desktops that are virtual and locked down, internet content filtering, cloud environments, distributed infrastructure, and of course, on-prem regular infrastructure. Are you ready to jump your company forward a few decades? Let's let Nexus IT Consultants show you how. Go out to visit them, folks, at www.nexusitc.net or call them at 435-659-2533. Now, we need to mention on this podcast that Nexus is a sponsor of the WebCheck Security Cyber Summit. In fact, they're the premier anchor sponsor. That's going to be held on April 21st, and we've decided to donate a portion of the proceeds to the Eyes Open Foundation run by SoftServe, who has thousands of employees in the Ukraine and are helping with all kinds of humanitarian issues and helping the war effort in the Ukraine. So go to webchecksecurity.com and look at our events page. So that's webchecksecurity.com/events. And you can learn more about that Cyber Summit, about Nexus sponsorship, about Earl's upcoming session. And of course, we're very excited about donating to a great cause. All right. And we are back with Mr. Earl Foote, CEO of Nexus IT Consultants. And Earl, let's get back on track here and carry on. What have you seen that's new in the industry with regards to cyber hygiene? What solutions are you offering now that you weren't offering a year ago?
As we see sort of this kind of landscape change so quickly, and as you mentioned, Greg, a lot of new framework and regulation that's happening, and even old regulations like PCI that now is on version 4.0, where they, every few years they review, they look at the evolving landscape, and they say, okay, well, these controls and these measures really are, some of these are no longer valid, and we have to now replace those with,
right,
more modern strategies and tactics and controls. Not only that, but we're seeing a significant amount of new legislation. Right here in our most recent legislative session here in Utah, of course, the new Utah Consumer Privacy Act was passed, and so now Utah businesses, it's obligated by law now that they start to look really tightly about how they manage the data that they store that belongs to other people, how they manage that PII. And then the access that those people have to their own data, and how they allow permission or deny permission to organizations for use and access to that information. So we're seeing this compliance, sort of landscape evolve so quickly, and lots of businesses really scrambling to try to keep up with it. Particularly what we're seeing happen in the space, Greg, is that larger companies, of course, they have very robust data management and vendor management sort of programs now,
right,
and they won't engage with a partner or another business unless you can verify through third-party attestation that you have robust cyber practices, and you're not going to expose their data and their users or their clients' data to risk by engaging with you. So we're seeing this massive shift in the marketplace where bigger fish are saying to the smaller fish, like, if you want to do business with us, here are the parameters under which you're going to do that from a cyber and compliance perspective. And if you don't get there, like if we're talking about a new partnership right now, like if you aren't there now, you've missed the opportunity. And that's why I talk about this being an opportunity a lot, because when a business, say a $20 million a year business, comes to you and I and says, man, I've got this big fish on the line. They're doing $500 million in revenue a year, or maybe they're doing several billion of dollars of revenue a year. And they've handed me this 50-page document, an assessment of all the controls that I need to have in place. And if I don't get this done in a week, we're going to lose this opportunity, right?
Right. Right. That's happened to you, by the way, and we've worked on those, and your clients have been very happy.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. And there's those scenarios where the big fish won't wait. Unfortunately, sometimes the big fish will go find another partner that is ready to engage with them from a cyber and compliance perspective, right? Right. Sometimes they're patient enough to say, okay, we'll give you a 3-month ramp up period to get there, and that's where you and I can help them significantly in that process, right? Anyways, we're seeing this shift to where smaller businesses are being required by bigger businesses to put on their big boy pants and say, okay, we've got to buckle down. We got to make sure we have the right process, procedure, practices, and controls in place in order to engage. And so there is a massive opportunity in the marketplace right now for smaller or even larger businesses that can show, and particularly through third-party attestation, that they have good cyber hygiene, as you refer to it, right? Right. When you can go to market with that as one of your value propositions, of course, there's more opportunity in front of you. And oftentimes, frankly, your margins can be better, your price can be better, and you have new revenue opportunities in front of you. So I encourage business leaders to, of course, in this space, we talk a lot about risk, but I would say that most of the business leaders in a business leadership unit have grown somewhat numb to that conversation of risk. They're used to dealing with, a certain amount of risk every single day. Except for maybe the CIO, the IT manager, the CISO, the CTO kind of types, right? Those are the people that are pushing for better cyber hygiene. But it's oftentimes difficult for them to get the rest of the business leadership unit on board with those initiatives. And so when you get a business leadership unit to start to look at this more as an opportunity, because that is what it is in front of them. You begin to understand, okay, I have a competitive advantage here. If I, institute these measures, and I can go to market with documents in hand to the bigger fish and say, hey, look, I'm ready. I've done all my homework, and here it is in front of you. And I have third-party attestation that, we have the proper process, procedure, practices, and controls in place, and that we manage those on an ongoing basis. We're seeing a lot of opportunity in the market right now in that space.
Yes, indeed, you are, and we've talked to some of those clients of yours, Neil, or Earl, that have just been thrilled with the result. We personally at WebCheck have a questionnaire we're filling out from a large SaaS platform that we're pen testing, so it's becoming more and more common. Well, goodness, the time, we could talk about this for a long time, but I'm just going to encourage our listeners to come to the April 24th Salt Lake Cyber Summit, because Earl, I understand you're doing a breakout session that will be even more in depth than what we've gone into here.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to dig deeper here and really help, businesses understand what modern cybersecurity and compliance looks like, what they need to be planning for, what their 3 and 5 year roadmaps need to look like in this space, right? And how and where to leverage the opportunities. And Greg, I know you may be part of that conversation with me. I know you have other, sessions and everything going on. But I'm excited. Nexus and I are super excited to be involved in this Cyber Summit, and helping to create thought leadership in the space, particularly in the local Utah ecosystem. But, we know that those waves ripple, and they ripple pretty far. And so we're excited to be involved in this with you. We appreciate the opportunity, and certainly excited to be, anchor sponsor for this event.
Oh, thank you. Well, I will be there moderating your session and listening to your awesome advisement to all of the attendees. Will you also have a booth at that event?
That is accurate. Yes, we will. Thank you for asking.
Good. Yes, and who will be staffing said booth? who can some of your prospects and clients talk to at that event?
Yeah, I mean our sales team, our account management teams, everybody that's in our business development departments, Brianne Rochelle, Mallory Lovestad, Casey Lunsford, Joe Nice. Let's see, Mike Hadley. Mike Hadley will be there.
Steve
Peterson. Myself, I'll be there, at least for part of it. I do have another conference that day as well, so I'll be there for part of the conference. Right. I have another conference and another speaking engagement that day. But I'll be there for part of it, and then a lot of our team will be there. So stop by the booth. We'd be happy to talk more about what this all looks like, what the future looks like, and how we can help you prepare for that now, and help you leverage opportunities that are available to you in the marketplace.
It's going to be a great day, April 21st. As we wrap up here, Earl, what are some of the biggest wins, or a biggest win that you'd like to discuss that you've had at Nexus? And this could be anything. It could be some of your corporate objectives, the growth and maturity, personnel. What would you say that's been over this past year?
For me, Greg, and this might be somewhat of an unconventional answer, we've certainly received some accolades and awards. I already talked about, doubling revenue and team size in the last year. There's been a lot of, picking up a significant amount of clients, beginning our regional expansion and starting to reach tentacles out into regional markets and having clients, in different markets in the U.S. That's all part of it. For me, the absolute biggest win is that we haven't sold out our culture and our soul in the process. In fact, it's improved. Even with growth at scale, I would say, based upon our anonymous, polling of our employees, that for the most part, everybody feels like we're headed in the right direction. We're doing the right thing, and the culture is phenomenal, right? People are having a great time. We love collaborating. We love producing the right results for our clients and for our team members. We love creating a really cool company with a really cool culture. If we couldn't do that and also have significant success in the public eye, I wouldn't want to have the latter, right? And so I'm just super pleased that, I think you could go anonymously to, again, 98% of our team, and they would say, man, this is so amazing. We're having the best time. And this is such a great thing that we're doing, right? And that for me is, I think, the biggest win, right now. And the biggest win, over our history is being able to keep that culture and our employee experience intact and our client experience intact in the process.
Well, thanks for sharing that. That speaks to the old saying, the fish stinks from the head down, Earl. And that also means that if there's a good thing going on, it's because the C-suite cares, and you certainly do as a business owner. You care about your employees, you care about your clients. You're not just in it to make the big bucks and then take off and have fun. When you are taking off and having fun, a lot of times you're doing humanitarian work. So it's just an honor to be associated with you. Well, Earl, as we wrap up here, what are some key things that, if you were to just quickly list one or two things that businesses can do today or schedule today to improve their cyber hygiene, what would you tell them?
Maybe three things. First of all, get a third-party assessment. Mm-hmm. Reach out to Greg or I to help you understand where your gaps are now and what a roadmap and action plan looks like to cover those. Second is know that, again, 90 to 95% of your risk lies in your people, and you need to begin to institute, robust cyber education for them. We can help with that. It's not expensive. It's $25 or $30 per user per year to leverage these cyber education platforms that do a fantastic job. And then, last but not least, is you've got to start getting serious about practice, policy, procedure, controls, and some of these modern things that we've been talking about, like MFA, right, single sign-on, zero trust, all these different things. Yeah.
All an important part of what I call the cyber pie. And there's not a silver bullet, and any vendor that tells you that is blowing smoke up the patootie, right? It's truly a layered approach, and you've already mentioned that. And I think the word you used was multifaceted, and certainly cybersecurity is that. Well, Earl, how can people reach out to you directly? What's the best way for people to reach you or Nexus IT?
Yeah, of course, our website, nexusitc.net. We are very active in social media, so check us out on LinkedIn and Facebook primarily, Nexus IT or myself, Earl Foote. And locally in Utah, you can reach out to us at 801-839-7006. Fantastic.
Well, Earl, it's been such an honor to have you here today. I think so highly of you as a friend, as a business leader, as a partner, and I'm just honored that you'd be here. So thank you very much.
The feeling is absolutely mutual. Thank you so much for the invitation, Greg.
Thanks. Well, Vistas thanks its sponsors. Of course, Nexus ITC has always been an anchor sponsor of the Vistas podcast. For world-class security and home automation, also Vivint has been a great sponsor at 1-800-570-1313. Today's music has been provided by Suit Up Soldier and can be downloaded on Spotify, Apple Music, and other popular platforms. Check back soon for another episode of Vistas, which we publish at least monthly. And until next time, be positive and see only the good in others.